Get ready everyone! This is gonna be epic! DC and Marvel are teaming up again for a crossover in the comics, and it's official, Batman is gonna meet none other than Deadpool. Yeah, you heard it right, this crossover is on its way. We've got official images, a creative team working on the comic at both Marvel and DC, and some juicy details about what's coming. But I bet you're wondering, Batman and Deadpool? Is this really the best crossover choice? Is it gonna work? Stick with me and I'll spill all the details right now. Back in February, at an event called Comics Pro in Glendale, California, the top editors from both DC and Marvel announced that a crossover between the two was in development after more than 20 years. With the success of the sales of the two omnibus editions gathering the crossovers DC vs. Marvel and the Amalgam, they suddenly saw the possibility of hitting it big again. Through Entertainment Weekly, it was revealed in an exclusive that this crossover will feature Batman and Deadpool. DC will be developing Batman and Deadpool, while Marvel will be handling Deadpool and Batman. Crossovers between Marvel and DC used to happen pretty often in the past. The first one back in 1976 was Superman vs. The Amazing Spider-Man, and the last one, Justice League/Avengers, came out in 2003. Since then, there hasn't been a crossover like that. Fans celebrated these events more for the character meetups and battles than for the actual stories. Only one or two plots were truly interesting, but overall, the crossovers were pretty mediocre at best. However, we got one good piece of news and one bad one regarding this new Batman and Deadpool comic. The good news is more on DC's side, as the creative team for this project is gonna be Grant Morrison on the scripts and Dan Mora on the art, which is a heavyweight team that'll definitely catch the attention of any comic book fan. The bad news is for Marvel, as aside from the incredibly talented Greg Capullo doing the artwork, we've got none other than Zeb Wells on the scripts. Yeah, he's one of the most disliked writers by Marvel fans lately, all thanks to the horrendous run he had on Amazing Spider-Man. So, yeah, it's not exactly encouraging for the Marvel side. According to that exclusive from Entertainment Weekly, a lot of things need to align, explains Dan Buckley, president of Marvel Comics and Franchise. We generally plan our editorial schedule pretty far in advance. DC does the same. You want to have the right talents involved because with something like this, you want to elevate the quality as much as possible to excite people. Jim Lee, president, creative director, and editor of DC Comics, echoed similar sentiments in a separate Zoom chat, noting how DC usually works 2 to 3 years ahead. According to Jim Lee, it happens kind of once every generation of readers. The timing has to be right, in that you don't want to do these too often. You want them to feel special. It's sort of finding that right moment for both companies to come together because it's complex. There's a lot more coordination, collaboration, and approvals that have to be done. And obviously, from the business side, you're sharing revenue, but it's gonna be a big deal. So you want the story, creatively, to warrant all the hype. So, with these statements, we can see how challenging and bureaucratic it is to pull off crossovers between Marvel and DC, which justifies and somewhat demands a high standard of quality in the storyline. We really want this to be more than just hype and actually succeed, leaving the door open for future crossovers. Personally, I still dream of a DC vs. Marvel fighting game. I think outside of the comics, that would be the best medium for this crossover. Just imagine all the characters, different moves, and skins that game could have. That would be a dream, and if done right, it would be a hit. But back to the comics, it doesn't help to just have the hype, because if the story isn't good, sales are gonna tank pretty fast since people will read it and won't recommend it to others. So the story really needs to have quality, and I'm keeping my fingers crossed for that. Alright, but when's this crossover coming out? The EW article also shares the release date. The comic drops on September 17, 2025, and it tells the story of how Wade Wilson gets hired for a job in Gotham City that puts him on the radar of the world's greatest detective. The exclusive goes on to highlight that along with the main story, there will be a series of supporting adventures featuring exciting clashes between Marvel and DC characters, according to an official description. However, details about what that involves, including the creative teams, will be revealed later. But regarding Batman and Deadpool, Zeb Wells shared a statement with EW, saying, "After writing Amazing Spider-Man for 60 issues, I told Marvel I needed a break. Marvel told me I could do that, Or I could write a comic starring Deadpool and Batman with the best Batman artist of our generation. I no longer needed a break. In Batman, we found someone who has even less time for Deadpool's antics than Wolverine, but a citywide threat from the Joker makes strange bedfellows, literally, if Deadpool had his way. It's been a blast letting Deadpool loose in Gotham City and watching what happens. Then you've got Greg Capullo, the artist on this project, saying, "Am I dreaming? This crossover is likely to be the high point of my career, and I've had a great career." He continued, "Some of my earliest work, many years ago, was on X-Force, so Deadpool and I go way back. More recently, I spent 10+ years drawing Batman at DC. The idea that I get to do a crossover event with Deadpool and Batman. If I am dreaming, please don't wake me." I really like Capullo's work. In my opinion, he did an amazing job alongside Scott Snyder on the new 52 Batman comics, and more recently with Batman, he worked on the Batman and Spawn crossover. But despite his art being fantastic, unfortunately, the story was pretty weak. Now, moving to the DC side, the dynamic duo of Grant Morrison and Dan Mora has worked together before on Klaus, the comic series from Boom Studios that reimagined Santa Claus as a muscular gray warrior. In the EW exclusive, Morrison said, "I don't do many comics these days, but there was no way I could turn down the chance to work with Dan Mora again, one of my all-time favorite artistic collaborators, and definitely no way I could turn down Batman and Deadpool. Expect 4th wall-busting mayhem, owls, blood, blades, and at least one giant typewriter." You can bet Morrison is capable of writing something really good, even with Deadpool. He mentioned breaking the fourth wall, which he did masterfully in Animal Man, and given that he referenced owls and giant typewriters, we could conclude that the Court of Owls is going to be involved in this. And who knows, with that detail about the giant typewriter, he might be hinting at something that fits the Silver Age vibe of comics. I wouldn't be surprised if that happens, especially since he brought in a lot of those elements from that period into his Batman run in an interesting way, so the chance of this being a cool project is high. As for Dan Mora, he stated, "This is more than I ever imagined I could do in my career, and it is a huge honor to be part of this crossover. It doesn't happen too often, and I am a huge Deadpool fan. When I first worked with Grant, I didn't know what to expect, but it was an incredible team-up. I always hope to work with Grant again, and working on Batman/Deadpool is like a dream come true. Grant and I working together on this once-in-a-lifetime project is going to be such a fun experience. There's no doubt that this team is a big deal, and their work is going to grab a lot of attention. First off, Grant Morrison is an amazing writer. His run on Batman is still one of the most memorable if not the most over the past few years. No one who has come after him has managed to leave as huge an impact on Batman as Morrison has, who also wrote a phenomenal story back in the late 80s with Arkham Asylum, a serious house on serious Earth. And if that wasn't enough, his works are heavily influencing James Gunn's DCU. All-Star Superman is a major reference for Gunn's film, and Batman Brave and the Bold will draw a lot from Batman and Son and the rest of the run as a whole, so it's hard not to get excited about this comic. As for Dan Mora, there's really not much to say, he's just the artist of the moment at DC. With all due respect to other great current artists, like Jorge Jimenez, whose work I also really admire, but Dan Mora is the guy right now. His work with Mark Waid on World's Finest is great, so he's that kind of artist you just know is gonna deliver something amazing, which is awesome. By the way, check out the cover by Dan Mora. Notice how Batman is wearing his new suit, right? It's gonna debut in the upcoming run by Matt Fraction that's dropping soon in the Batman comics. So, that's a cool little detail. This suit is gonna stick around for a while, just like the new 52 outfit and the one from the start of Rebirth. According to Jim Lee, deciding on the right combination of characters to crossover involved a constant flurry of emails. It's not just two people, it's groups of people. So yeah, the conversations tend to be very robust and long. From this, we can say that choosing Deadpool as Marvel's character to crossover with Batman might not exclusively come from Marvel. Think about it, Deadpool is a character that has been incredibly successful lately. The Deadpool and Wolverine movie is a billion-dollar film, so it totally makes sense to have him in this crossover. If we think about other big characters like Spider-Man or Daredevil, they've both had crossovers with Batman in the past. And while I still think Spider-Man would be a more interesting choice, it makes total sense to consider Deadpool as a way to bring in something new and different from what's gone down previously. Continuing with the article, another piece of news is that Deadpool/Batman or Batman/Deadpool isn't the end of the crossovers between Marvel and DC. There's another series of one-shots set to come out in 2026 at some point, although both sides remain tight-lipped about which characters will join in next and which creatives will be involved in making those adventures. When it comes to other characters and creative teams, Jim Lee commented, "Anyone that's working in comics today grew up with a Marvel, DC crossover at some moment in their reading timeline history. I think once you become a creator, you want to work on the biggest characters for both companies, but then to be able to do something that only happens every 15, 20 years, it's something you don't want to pass up. So I think fans are going to see a lot of interesting projects from their favorite creators. That's all I can say." So, yeah, even though they haven't announced anything yet, it's obvious that there will also be crossovers featuring other characters. If the publisher's goal is to have great success in sales, I hope they get other big artists on board for this crossover. I gotta say, I'd really love to see a crossover with Nightwing and Spider-Man or Daredevil. I think that could make for a really cool urban story. Or another option, even to ride the wave of movie releases, could be a crossover with Superman and the Fantastic Four. That would also be pretty cool in my opinion. But now I want to know your thoughts. Are you hyped for Batman and Deadpool? What other Marvel and DC crossover would you like to see? Drop a comment, and don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit that bell icon, cause this is the place where you'll stay updated on all superhero news. Subscribe to keep up with everything. Also, consider supporting our work through the thanks button next to the subscribe button. That way, you help us bring you even more videos than usual, and always with better quality. Thanks a ton for all the support you give us. I'm gonna leave you with 2 video recommendations, one from DC and another from Marvel. I'm sure you'll enjoy them. Thanks again, and see you next time.